Welcome to Inside Football, a KLCoaching podcast. This show features conversations with coaches and players on development in the game, exploring how players actually improve, how coaches think, and the real experiences from inside football. Today I'm joined by Dan, a coach working across women's and girls football, currently at Leek Town with experience in coaching in England and abroad in Kuwait. We'll be talking about his coaching journey, development, and the reality of progressing through the qualifications in football. So, Dan, how are you today, mate?
I'm doing brilliant, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us. Um, like I said, we'll just start on a little bit of introduction and background behind yourself. So, how would you say that you first got into coaching football?
Uh, I wasn't very clever at school, so the obvious way forward was PE, really. So I decided that, you know, do I want to be a PE teacher? Did I want to be a coach in some way? And I thought PE teaching sounds a little bit forward for when I was about 15 or 16. So I thought that I'd go to college and I'd do sport because I said I wasn't clever enough for A levels. So I made sure that I went to Derby. I went to Broomfield. I had sort of tours around different colleges. I had one in Crewe as well, which was really good. But I decided on Derby at Broomfield, and that was a really good step for me. So that was on the sports coaching and development program that they had. I did 2 years there, and that sort of opened my eyes really to what I wanted to do in terms of sports coaching and obviously in particular football coaching. Really, that's all I really wanted to do. So then I took the step to go into the first team, which was Field Lane under 14s with Ben, who you obviously know very well. So I've sort of got a bit of a connection with Ben. We've coached together for years and years. So we did Field Lane to start off with. He did a couple of seasons there. I sort of did half a season. Then we moved on. Uh, that'll be a big theme that I'll move on. Moved on to Spondon under 14s girls, which you were a part of for the sort of back couple of months of that. That opened my eyes to a lot of things within coaching, which I think we'll probably get onto. That was an experience. Um, and then I went to Derby with the under 10s, sort of did sort of 8 or 9 months there, and then Burton Albion, which is where me and Ben really got our break. I especially got my break into coaching from Burton Albion. We did the under 11s there, which was a really, really good project to do. We had some players that had never really played football before. Um, got got them playing really, really good football with the getting a lot of plaudits from sort of parents, referees, other coaches, and we ended up, not that it matters obviously in youth football winning, but we ended up winning sort of the league in the second season, which winning the league wasn't the main aim, obviously. It was for, improving players. And then obviously from improving players, we then managed to win games, which was nice. Then we went on to the development team at Burton Albion, which was the first step into sort of women's football, which is really, really good. That would, yeah, again, open my eyes, open probably Ben's eyes as well into that world of coaching when results, yeah, again, with a development team, the results don't matter, as the paramount, but they do matter to players, to parents, to coaches. It's the natural ego of everything. Everyone wants to win, especially at 11 aside, when you can really try and show tactically how good you are as a coach and technically how you can improve players as well. So that was the main thing. And then obviously through that we got a couple of sessions in with the first team with a coach that I know really well, Ben knows really well with Joe Kirkland. He's a really, really good coach currently at Solihull Moors, which at time of recording previously played in, lost 3-0, but that doesn't matter. Um, so after that, we went set up our own team at Stapenhill as a sort of open age first team, which is obviously the first time that I'd coached in a first team environment, which was for the couple of, what was it, probably up until sort of January. It was and stuff that you can have within coaching that can hold you back. Stuff happened that was out of our control, and then I ended up getting really lucky. Yeah, again, that's a really, really important part of football. I'm sure that you know that as well as everyone, probably, the three people listening to this. Um, they probably know that you need to get really lucky. Got an ad on Facebook that wants the team. Luckily, a nice man called Ian Smith, who runs League Town Women, decided to give me a call. I did one session. He quite liked the look of the way that I coached. And I've been there since last February. So I've lasted a year, which is probably the most that I've lasted at a team, to be honest. So it's really good. It's been really good. Been really eye-opening as well, coaching at tier five. Like it's easily the best that I've coached at in terms of levels in England. And then obviously, sure, we'll get onto it, sandwiched sort of within development team at Burton Albion. I went away to Juventus, which was easily the best experience of my life, not just in coaching, but just in general. It's the first time that I've moved away from home. I've done sort of the university program with South Wales, which is, it's an online university course. It's not, you don't go away for 3 years. Um, you have to, if you can stay at home, which is what I did. So it's the sort of the online work was really good, but then the practical work is when everything comes in. I decided to make the jump out to Juventus, and it was probably the best decision that I made. Probably the worst decision that I made also in coaching. There's bad decisions and good decisions that I decided to leave after sort of probably 6 months, I think. Probably 6 months after I left there when I should have stayed on. But that's obviously a decision that I'll have to live with. But for that 6 months, it was an amazing experience, an amazing time. I met some really, really good coaches, Craig and Tom, the two people that are, the two big bosses, I guess, in Juve. They worked at Arsenal and Oxford and other clubs at the top level. Will, who I also work with, he set up his own coaching company. Josh he's got a role at Colchester as well. So really, really good coaches. So yeah, that's sort of the overall coaching experience that I've had. I'm sure I've missed out bits here and there, but yeah, it's been really, really good so far.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of it. I mean, you're only young yourself, and you've had already such a good coaching career of loads of different teams, loads of different experiences, and those experiences are really important to develop yourself as a coach and to sort of find yourself and find your own philosophy, find how the best ways to coach, and doing all these age groups does help that. So I mean, you mentioned you've done under tens, and now you're doing um, women's. So it's a big jump, and you've obviously filled the gaps in between that. Um, so going back a little bit earlier onto the start of your career at college at university, how would you say those sort of the lessons, the practical side of things, how did they develop you? So more away from a team environment or a club environment, how do you think you developed as a coach yourself in an educational environment?
Yeah, so I think the theory side of it is really important because you can learn stuff on the grass. I mean, I know there'll be loads of coaches that sort of gone from playing to coaching. They don't have the theory behind it, which, it's sort of their pathway. They've seen other coaches do that. I didn't have the luxury of that really. Um, I've had a footballing journey, but not in terms of any academy football or anything like that. So I've not had like amazing coaches to sort of work off and see. So at college and uni, it's, obviously lecturers. It's not telling you what to do and how to do it, but sort of giving you the ideas and how to structure a session. Really, I mean, it's what you get from sort of, I did the old level one where you had to do it in person, obviously the level two and the UEFA C. So I've done those three. The level one was especially just how to structure a session. So in college, it was how do you structure a session to make sure that it just works together. So it's very easy now looking back at it at 25 and going, yeah, I know that needs to be like skill, technical, game, or however you want to put, or hard part, whole part, whole, or anything like that. But obviously at that age, you don't know. So especially in college, it's how you just structure everything together to make sure it makes sense for players to develop. Because if it's all over the place, nothing's going to happen. In uni, that was a lot more sort of. getting everything that you've learned from college, any experiences that you've had, and then just ramping it up a little bit more, and then putting a lot more theory behind it. Obviously, with South Wales, it was a football coaching course, so everything was related to football. Um, so it's a lot of tactical detail in any sort of, I'm going to say, thesis, assignment, anything that you want to do in sort of that way. I made lots of mistakes, which is obviously good because you're doing it just in front of your peers. I know you had Isaac on your first on your first podcast. So I was 2 years above him in that same sort of university program. So you make all your mistakes sort of there. So that was probably the best grounding that I had, where I didn't just go straight into a team and have no idea what to do. When I went into my first team, I actually knew what was happening and I knew how to structure a session. So that was probably the best thing that came out of college and university.
Yeah, now from a personal experience, working as a coach developer inside of clubs, we kind of we kind of stay away from the theory side of things. We don't focus on it as much, because at the end of the day, they're parent volunteers. We just need to teach them how to coach. So we find it really important to just get them out on the grass and learn by doing it. Um, Now, obviously, through your experience, you've said that, and you've mentioned that the theory side of things did help you massively. Now, if we move away from the theory side of things, where when you got onto the grass, when you got your ball, when you got your cones, and you were in a team, how did you find your development there, and maybe what was a real turning point of maybe when you were, I don't know, maybe at Spondon or maybe at Derby, when you were like, okay, I'm finding my feet now. I can coach.
Yeah, well, the first thing is obviously I came in, I was quite lucky because at Field Lane I was with Ben. So Ben instantly was like, well, you're going to do sessions, like you're going to go in and you're going to take on some stuff. So it's instantly a sort of a sink or swim moment where you can either, for lack of a better word, bottle it and just freeze and not know what to do. And you stood in front of, I don't know, 15 or 16 sort of 13-year-olds, and you're the, I don't know how old it was, probably 21 or whatever. You're the 21-year-old and you're freezing a bunch of 13-year-olds, and they're thinking, but you're meant to be the coach. Like, why you freeze and why can't you tell me what to do, sort of thing. So luckily that didn't happen, and I'm still coaching now. But it's really important that you are able to sort of just have a go, make your mistakes. I think that's the main thing for me, is that they possibly won't know because I was quite confident with it, but I made loads of mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes in coaching. You give sort of the wrong information, or you set up slightly wrong, so you move a couple of cones out or something whilst people aren't looking or anything like that. Or you might tell your assistant, "Can you take this on? I just need to change something." So it's all about making your mistakes and doing practical work. I'm sure you saw in Spondon, we made loads of mistakes. We did tons of mistakes. It's just the way that it goes when you're a younger coach and you're just getting into it. But it's important that you learn by your mistakes. So if I was the same coach that I was in Spondon as I am now, I'd be struggling. But obviously I've learned. Same with you. I'm sure when you were the, what, 15-year-old or whatever you were when you were at Spondon, you're not the same coach as you are now doing your coaching development and, having your own podcast. I don't think you're the same person there, are you? So it's all about having the experiences, especially with Derby. Derby was a bit of a turning point in terms of the standards, because obviously in grassroots it was sort of me and Ben, and we might have had another coach or something, but we set the standards. Whereas at Derby, there was actually an academy director. There was someone that was setting the standard, um, to actually make sure that things were happening properly from his perspective, not just our perspective in a grassroots club. So that also helped me a lot. That people were constantly on to me going, you need to be doing this, you need to make sure that the development's right, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. So that was the main part of it as well.
I think that's really important. The point you made about making the mistakes. I think some coaches can get caught in a trap of maybe having too big of an ego, of going, I am the boss, I'm the coach, and everything I do is right. And that is where you will just hit a straight line and you will never develop because, like you say, it's so important to learn from those mistakes. And if you can go your whole coaching career without making a single mistake, then I mean, it doesn't happen. It's
You're not
impossible.
doing it right.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
and
you're not doing it right if you don't make a mistake.
yeah, you will not develop. And the best way to develop is to just get on that pitch and have 20 minutes of just pure mistake, because then by evaluation, which is something that we might come on to later on, is massively important. And I don't think enough coaches do it, of after a session just having an hour to yourself of going, right, what went well, why did it go well, what went wrong, why did it go wrong, how can I improve it next. And it's so important that not enough coaches do, and that is where the development and the improvement comes from, of having that self-reflection and learning from those mistakes, like you say. um so we'll move away from sort of the step-by-step pathway and career that you've had so far, and we'll more focus on um just yourself in the coaching and in the women's game. So away from the education side more and just coaching into the women's game. Um, so you're currently coaching at Leek Town, which is a women's step five team.
Yeah, yeah, tier five.
Um, what is it that you enjoy about uh, the female coaching, or the female pathway, in comparison to the boys or the men's pathway?
Well, it started off so when I was younger, so I never really wanted to do it, to be honest. And it was Ben that sort of shifted me away from doing that because there's obviously more opportunities. Um, and obviously just girls football isn't platformed enough. So I think of myself as a relatively decent coach and someone that wants to platform women's football. So I thought to myself, like, why would I not? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you see so many like sexist comments on Twitter and Facebook or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's football. We all love football. Just because it's a different gender doesn't mean that it's any worse. I've seen some better players in this League Town team that I have in other men's teams that I've seen. So it's it's all the same. It's all the same sport. So I wanted to, after we sort of did the under 14s with Spondit, I wanted to make sure that this was my sort of USP, my selling point, that I was a women's football coach and I wanted to go up the levels. And obviously, as I said before, we got a break at Burton Albion. But I think the main point of it is to platform women's football because it's not enough. There's not enough funding. There's not enough people that are interested. There's not enough for the facilities. Even if you go into, so I used to work at Nottingham Forest as well with the Premier League primary stars, and you see some schools and they don't offer football to girls, and I think that's crazy. After like the what we've done in the international tournaments, there's still not enough people trying to platform it. So, if there's people like me, Ben, whoever, that are trying to platform women's football, I think it's the best thing for the sport because it will only grow. And the only chance that things have of growing is if it's from the grassroots, from the youth side of it. Because if it's all great having, a good elite standard, but if there's nothing coming through the grassroots and the youth level, then you're stuck. So I think it's really important that you have people that are genuinely interested because you could be a very mediocre coach, but you'll be much better if you're a mediocre coach that absolutely loves women's football and wants the best for it than an incredible coach that doesn't care at all. That's in my opinion anyway.
Absolutely, I love that, and I love the passion that you have towards not only developing footballers but developing the women's game as a whole. And we spoke quite a lot on the other podcast with Ella Brennan about the women's game and about how it is getting better, but it will only get better if these people like yourself, like Ben, continue to keep growing and keep giving women's football the platform that it deserves. Now you mentioned about how they are footballers, and I love that saying, and it's not used enough. They are just footballers. Whether you put men or women in front of it, it does not matter. They are footballers. Now there
Yeah.
are certain circumstances where you may have to treat it slightly different. Um,
Yeah.
do you think coaching in the women's game requires a different approach to if you were coaching in the men's game?
Yeah, I think so. But I think every team and every age group also requires nuance and it requires different skills. It requires different soft skills. Everything's different. Every single person is different. So men's and women's is different, definitely. Uh, Personally, I've not coached in non-league or anything like that, but I can imagine the stuff that happens in the changing room, like non-league. If you're 2-0 down away from home, you know, things are probably getting thrown, things are
Yeah,
probably
well,
getting said
I
that
mean,
shouldn't be said.
I've
You know,
experienced that kind of from my personal experience at Gresley Rovers. I've definitely experienced that and know exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about with that.
So in any other walk of life, it wouldn't be accepted, but in football, it is. So, I think in the women's game, it's just, I think a bit calmer. I think a lot of, from what I've seen as well, a lot of people, I can't remember, there was a coach that actually said, women are a lot more emotional and stuff like that than men when it comes to certain scenarios. And I actually think it's quite a bit calmer, especially if you're losing like 2-0 or whatever, people have their say, but teacups aren't getting thrown or anything like that. Um, I think everything is generally just a lot calmer. I think there's a lot more sensible actions. And I think a lot of the stuff is, actually really, really positive. A lot of women, a lot of girls, they want to know the why. I think a lot of coaches also say this. They want to know the why they doing certain stuff. Why do I have to do that? How is it going to impact me? Which I think is amazing that they want to learn. Whereas a lot of boys, a lot of men, me included, if I'm playing Sunday League, not as much now because I'm a coach, but when I was younger, someone would say, to jump, and I'd say how high. Whereas actually, a lot of the women that I coach and girls that I've coached, they'll go, well, why am I jumping? Which I think is it's a lot better to look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a development side of things, that's exactly what you want as a coach. Of that question of being why is exactly what you want, and you don't want them to be going jump or how high. If they
Yeah,
want to learn and they're willing to learn, then as a coach, you can give them the skills that you've got to help them in learning. And it's having those coachable characters, and you see them throughout grassroots football, throughout men's football. Um, there's a lot of egos, a lot of uncoachable players, and they're just so hard to work with. And what you've explained there about the women's game is, it seems like you can put all your expertise and skills onto the field, and they will appreciate that. Um, so uh, in the women's game, again, comparing it to the men's game, what are the development differences in those? I know you mentioned about how maybe when you get to women versus men, the women sort of want to keep developing, and the men have gained that ego of going, well, I'm at the top now. There's no more developing me.
yeah.
What are the development differences maybe in the younger age groups of boys and girls?
I don't, you know what? I don't think there's too many, to be honest with you, because yet again, they're trying to play football. That's the main thing. They're trying to play football. I think the boys probably watch more football and probably play more FIFA, etc. So they actually think they've got more of an idea of the game than what they do. I was the same when I was younger. So I used to watch football, I used to play FIFA, whatever, and I used to think that I know everything sort of thing. Actual fact, I didn't know a lot really, but I thought I knew a lot. Whereas the girls, they're more like sponges to everything. Whereas if you could say to a lad, right, I want you to do this, and they'll go, no, 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 I've seen, I don't know, Ruben Diaz, or I've seen this player do something else. I've seen how he plays out from the back or whatever, and I don't, I want to be like the one at Man City, and that's when you can sort of butt heads with someone on a bit of a development struggle. Whereas with girls, as I said, they're very, very easy to coach. They want to know why. And as a coach myself, I want to be able to explain to players why. Like I'm not a drill sergeant. I think if people, especially in non-league, this is a bit sort of I'm casting a net out here. But I think a lot of people in non-league can be more drill sergeants than coaches, and they'll say, "Do this, do this, do this, do that." Whereas in actual fact, if you're a coach, you want to say why because it will improve either the player or the team, depending what level you get into. I think at the younger levels, it's a lot easier to be a really, really good coach if you have a lot of knowledge, because everything should be about platforming the player. You shouldn't be bothered about the team, because if you improve the players, then the team will get better. So when I see, grassroots coaches or whatever, and they're, almost like prepping a team for a Sunday, and it's like under 11s. It's like you should be platforming players, you should be platforming people to make sure that they're better every session, and then they'll get better for the games. And it should be about that specific person. It shouldn't matter if in 3 seasons they're not with you anymore and they've left to join, whether it be another grassroots team or an academy or anything else. It should be about making sure that that player is the best version of themselves, rather than caring about a 2-1, at Alveston Park on a on a Sunday. That doesn't matter. It should be about the players.
Yeah, fantastic. And what you said there is brilliant, and I love the fact that you mentioned about developing the individual players, which will just develop the whole team, and the success will come alongside with it. Um, how do you think you get that across? Now, I know you mentioned at the start, um, your eyes opening at Spondon. It was a bit of a difficult time with the parents, as a lot
Yeah.
of coaches will experience, that is grassroots football. It happens. So how do you think you get across to the parents, and maybe the players as well, um, that we're not going to win at all costs? Your development as an individual, your development in how to play as a team, tactical developments, psychological, technical, all the stuff. How do you get across that is more important at your age than winning 2-1 at Alveston Park on Sunday?
Yeah, but I think you've just got to be honest. I think that's one thing that we possibly didn't do. Now, whether it would have worked or not, who knows? Because we didn't try it. But I think you need to be honest to people. You need to go, look, my weekend doesn't doesn't fall on whether we win or not at under 11s. Like it's not going to ruin my weekend, and it shouldn't ruin anyone else's weekend if we don't win. But if we see performances and if we see your child getting better, if you see your child getting better, that's a win. Every session, they should do something better. Every game, they should do something better. And if they don't, and if they start to go backwards, then that's our problem. Then that's our fault as coaches. But it shouldn't matter if you're, so for example, at Spondon, for some reason, they decided it was a good decision to put Derby County ladies into our league. So we'd get, a bit of a battering from them. But there was one game where, let's say, we got beat 15-0, you know, and then we closed the gap to or something. And as I remember, we managed to play through Derby's press and have a shot on target. For us, that's a win because we were so far below the level that winning wasn't what you're thinking the goal is, because it's so unrealistic that everyone's going to be failing if the goal is to win every week as a brand new team. So I think making sure that targets are, you hear everything about smart targets, but making sure they're realistic. I think that's the main aim for everyone. If you're a brand new player, the aim shouldn't be to score a hat trick every game. As a coach, I shouldn't expect that. I should be expecting that every session you get better. If we're working on passing, that you get better at your passing. If we're working on shooting, you should be getting better at your shooting. You should be having more shots closer to the goal. It doesn't even have to go in the goal, for it to be an improvement. I think that's just the main thing that we had comparing Spondon to then somewhere like Burton, where we were very open with the fact that this is the way we're going to do things. We lost a lot at Burton in the first year. Second year, we ended up winning the league because the way that we wanted them to play, yeah, again, going back, platforming players, making sure that they're the best version of themselves, we ended up winning a lot more games and losing a lot more games, not because we wanted to win at all costs, but because everything that we did was making sure that the players were a lot better version of themselves than the previous season.
Yeah, brilliant. It's finding those small wins, and like you say, maybe playing a team that you struggle against the 15 nils. If you get a shot on target, there's your win, and it's making the
Yeah,
players realise that look, you are developing. Yes, we need to work on A, B, C, D, but you got F right today, so well done, and take that home with you.
yeah,
And that's really important of getting that across. And yeah, like you said, I think you just kind of have to be honest, and it's one of the hardest things to do in grassroots football from
yeah,
experience, me and yourself, of just being honest with the parents, because it's not what they want to hear. A lot of these parents do not want to hear, I
that
am
they lose.
I am putting my time into your child so that they can have fun and that they can develop as a footballer. They don't
Yeah,
want you to say that. They want you to say, we are going to win today. And that's all they
yeah,
want to hear. And yeah, you've got to get that across to them that, look, my job is to make sure your child comes back to my session every single week with a smile on their face, and he's gone from a 5 yard pass to a 10 yard pass, or she's gone
yeah,
from a 5 yard pass to a 10 yard pass.
yeah.
And
It's the 1%.
yeah, and that's where the job is done from a coach's perspective. But to get that across to parents is a difficult task.
Difficult, especially at an early age as well, especially when you're younger, because you're talking to people that are years older than you, and you've got to be the one in charge, and you've got to go, no, I know what I'm doing. As a 20-year-old, I have, I have the keys sort of thing. I know what I want to do. I'm telling that to a 40-year-old. It can be daunting, can be really. I know I found that as well when I was getting shouted at by parents. Uh, what am I like? What am I going to say? Like, what can I do? Sort of thing. Obviously, now as an older coach, I'm lucky that I don't really have to deal with parents that much, and I can reason my way out of it at 25, knowing what I know. But when you're younger, especially, you got chucked into that environment with us, that it isn't nice. Like it isn't nice. There was one game where we got slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered. But it's character building. It's character building at that point. It's yeah, it's difficult, but as you say, being honest is the best policy, definitely.
So you said a load of really good information about developing those younger players and progressing on into the women's game. We're going to move over to the bit that I'm most excited to talk about, and I know a couple of people that I've spoke to have really wanted to hear an insight into this. So about your coaching in Kuwait with Juventus, how did the opportunity come about to get on that program?
Yeah. Well, the opportunity, I mean, as exciting as it sounds, I just applied through Indeed. So it wasn't it wasn't very exciting to be honest. I just saw it and I thought it's something that I wanted to do for ages. So I wanted to coach abroad in America, but never happened. It just didn't. Don't know whether it's probably from me just being a little bit lazy to be honest, but never got through to anyone through coaching in America or abroad or anything like that. And I saw it and I thought I might as well give it a go. And then surprisingly enough, they I got a text, got a WhatsApp from Tom, who's the head coach at Juve, really really good guy who's amazing for me, and basically just offering me an interview, which I didn't even think I was going to get an interview to start off, but it's obviously told, uh, the person that knows football the most, my dad, obviously. Um, and asked for his opinion. He was like, "Yeah, like go for it. Why not? What's the worst thing that can happen is they say no." So I went for the interview. Uh, Interview went really really well. They said that I was obviously one of the best candidates that they interviewed. Probably not on qualification alone, but just from I don't really know, just passion for it, just any insight that I could give. I you know put 100% into the interview. I had to do like a very very detailed sort of plan of, what I'd sent to parents, and I think it was first time finishing. It's like a presentation on first time finishing, what I had to deliver, which first time I'd ever, had to really do that. Obviously through uni, I'd done presentations, but not for like a coaching interview or anything like that. So that was new for me. Um, and then I got the call saying that I'd been accepted onto it. And then I think the first, rather than, you know, joy or anything like that, was just sheer panic of what have I got myself into. Um, which I think it's nice though. It's nice to have, the panic of something, of the complete unknown. Because I could have easily stayed um at Burton and not done it at all, but I decided to make the jump. And then got into Heathrow Airport with my dad, constantly just thinking in my head, going, you know what, I could just block his number and I could just not go. Like that's the panic I was in. But then I thought, no, not going to bottle it because previously I could have gone to different teams. Um, I sort of broadened my horizons a little bit, even in England, and I thought, no, like I'm gonna stay where I'm comfortable. And this was the point where I was like, I can't do that again. I've got to go out and I've got to make something of it. So went out, met up with the other coaches, flew out to Kuwait. Luckily for me, I was bedridden with an illness for the first 2 days, so that was really nice. But after that, did my first session. Um, Sort of explored around Kuwait. The heat was sort of, touching 40 degrees really out there when we first went out. It was, horrible sort of thing. And as part of what they did at Juve, you had to be in the scorching heat before any of the sort of coaching started, had to do all the goals, make sure they're all right, make sure the nets are tight, everything like mini goals, seven-a-sides, five-a-sides, everything, make sure everything's good to go at the university that we coached at, which was horrible. But it's a nice experience for meeting the new coaches, meeting the team, and then we got basically chucked into it straight away. Um, I, we did sort of different age groups throughout. So I believe I did like the under eights or something. I think it's like eights, 11s, and 14s. I want to say. I also did like the girls program, so I headed up the girls program as well with Craig, the academy director, who is an unbelievable coach as well. So me and him sort of did the older age group, and I sort of full reign for the younger age group and the middle age group with the three of them, which was really really good. I think that showed that they put, some sort of interest in what I did, as a female coach, that they put me in as a female coach on that coached female football. So going back to sort of when Ben, I hate to say that he was right, but going back to when me and Ben, sort of decided to go into women's football, he was right because obviously that allowed me to go out to Kuwait and coach with the women's program. So then, yeah, after that, sort of live in an apartment sort of on my own away from my parents, which is, the first time I've done that. And as I said previously, it's not just the coaching part, which is good. It's living away in a foreign country for the first time where the culture's so different, where you're working 6 days a week, coaching. God, I don't know how many days we used to coach. I think it would be maybe 4 or 5 training sessions. One day would be games. You got the opportunity to go out abroad and coach in tournaments and the CAFA, they call it CAFA tournaments, which I guess is probably the closest to maybe JPL. I think they probably got over here. So the CAFA tournaments were really, really competitive, even at like the under eights, because you're basically battling to be like the best academy in Kuwait. So at Juve, like unsurprisingly, really, we were the most expensive academy to be a part of. You had to buy in to be a part of the academy. So it was, different abilities, different age groups. So every session, you had to make sure that you were on the ball. So we used to have VO footage as well of the session. I remember one of my first sessions that I did, I got tucked in to Tom's apartment and he battered me about one of these sessions that I did. And he had the VO and he was like, that's not a Juventus session. Like, that's shit. Like that's, you shouldn't be doing that. Like that can't be a standard sort of thing. Like we know your standards, that's not it. So I was like, oh, okay. I'll make sure that we don't do it next time. So every time that Tom would speak to me, he wouldn't batter me every time, but it would be, constructive criticism. He'd be going like, you know what you can do. Like, you can do this. And if I do something well, obviously then the praise it or whatever. But I think in that sort of 6 months that I was out there, it's the most I've developed as a coach, easily. I think if you ask anyone sort of around Burton, the coaches of the players or anything, sort of going from pre-Kuwait to post-Kuwait, the difference was absolutely massive. And it was down to the coaches that were around me that sort of helped me develop because it was full time. It was a full-time job. So in the morning, we'd be planning and prepping, and then in the afternoon, evening would be delivering. So it was a full shift. It wasn't part-time work where we'd do something else. And we always have the analogy at Juve, you're not sort of planning the session in your car on the way to your grassroots team. Like you have the whole morning to plan and to prep and do your ILPs, do your team planning, do everything. So make sure that it's good. So that's sort of helped me so much in this, especially at Burton when I came back. I think that's probably the best that I've ever coached is in those 6 months that I came back from Kuwait because I was like a sponge in Kuwait. I just made sure that I tried to just plaster everything onto the Burton Albion team.
I love the fact that you're at the airport going, right, this is the time, I'm blocking him, I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
And
it was very easy. It's very easy, but you sometimes just got to chuck yourself into the situation.
and coaches will come across the easy route, and a lot of coaches will take that, but that's where your development will, again, I'll say again, it will flatline because you've just got to
Yeah,
jump in at the deep end. And I remember my first coaching session was with a group of 3-year-olds, and the majority of them were non-verbal. And I'd never coached before. I was the captain of a football team. That's about the most leadership I ever had. And I got thrown in at the deep end, and I had to coach these 3-year-olds. And that I did freeze. I was like, oh my gosh, what on earth am I going to do? They can't talk to me. I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about football. I've completely forgot everything. But looking back on it now, if I hadn't have done that, then I wouldn't have learned from it. And
yeah,
I love the fact that you just went with it, and it turned out to be the most you've developed as a coach. And like you said, I'm sure when you were over there, you took all that experience in of being a sponge and you've got the people around you to learn from, and the players to learn from, and the environment that you're in to learn from, and you just soak it all in, and you can't. I say that from all these experiences that I've had, I can take one thing from that, one thing from that, one thing from that, and then just merge it all together and become the coach that I am.
yeah,
And that is, and this is what this sort of experience can do to you. You can take something from Spondon, you can take loads of stuff from Kuwait, you can take loads of stuff from Burton, and then that's now how you've become yourself at League Town, and coaching
yeah,
there. Um, so obviously Juventus being an Italian team, the way they play football might differ to English football. Um,
yeah.
so what was different about coaching abroad, obviously in the heat and things like that, alongside coaching a foreign team that that differed from coaching, I don't know, maybe like someone like Manchester City or something like that. So coaching an English team, what's different about that?
Yeah, so well with us, so it wasn't necessarily at Juve they've been, stereotypically, at their best it was like 3-5-2. Whereas like in Juve in Kuwait, you weren't wedded to you've got to play like 3-5-2. You've got to play this way, you've got to play defensive football, you've got to do this. Because obviously it's basically a franchise, right? So you sort of buy into being at Juve, and being at Juve is the tagline of we provide the best service. So that's what it is. So it's the best service. So it's the best in class. So that's what Juve is. So it's having the ambitions of Juventus in real life of trying to win Serie A every season. that's the ambition of, in Kuwait. So you always want to win. You have to have the best advertisement for yourself. So even little things like Tom used to batter me about getting cones and lines. So as simple as it is, in England, in the grassroots team, like if you have a cone out of line, like no one's going to really say anything. But because they're paying money and because you are the best academy in Kuwait, if you have a cone out of line, that's seen as being lazy, which I agree with completely. I completely agree with. So you need to have the best standard for yourself. So that's the difference, I would say, just in that particular scenario, that everything needed to be perfect. Like perfection was perfect. It was almost seen as perfection as the minimum, which obviously you can never grasp perfection. But if you can get close to perfection, then that's when you get the best sessions. So everything from like the small little details. So the placement of the mini goals, the placement of the cones, making sure that things weren't in people's way, so everything could transition so quickly. Having a station for the water bottle, so they weren't going all the way over to the benches, so they could have 3-second break, then you're back into it. Making sure that everything was bordering on perfect. That's what we had in comparison to the ones in England. Now, I imagine the ones obviously at Man City and the academies there are also incredible. But just from what I've done in grassroots coaching, that was that was a difference in terms of the heat. It was more of a difference for us coaches than them because they play in that, they go to school in that, they do whatever in that heat. For us coaches, like Jesus Christ, like how am I going to be able to coach? And we used to coach in sometimes in four back-to-back sessions. So you get no break. So you'd be coached in like 35 to 40-degree heat back to back to back to back. And so you've got to manage yourself. And it's part of lifestyle as well. So you've got to fuel yourself as a good coach as well. So you've got to eat right, you've got to drink right, you've got to make sure everything's prepped. So that's all part of, close to perfection. That you've got to treat yourself right as well. You've got to do everything well. So that was the biggest difference for me, that you can sort of go about your day, do a 1 hour grassroots session, you feel a little bit crap, and you're like, well, I can manage it. You can't manage that, where we were. So
Um,
that was a real big difference.
Everything you've just said in that little segment is exactly what this podcast is aiming to give out, and it's the things about football that are beneath the surface. So if I was to mention coaching to someone, then they would never in a million years go, well, you've got to eat right. And they're
Yeah,
the things you just don't think about that do play a massive impact, especially when you're coaching in an environment like that, and planning, and I mean planning on the way to training or on the way home from work or something. You can't get away with things like that. And
yeah,
that happens at the elite level. But if that happened at a grassroots level, the player development that we would have in England as a whole would be absolutely unbelievable. Because from talking to a Spanish coach who coaches in grassroots, in I think he coaches in Mallorca or something. Um, he explained to me that all his sessions are like what you just explained, and I think he coaches under 10s or something like that. Now,
yeah,
from my experience in under 10s grassroots, there's not many coaches that don't plan on the way to the session, or don't come with a plan at all. And
yeah,
you see it way too often, and the development of players, and that's why you have these Juventus academy players, because of the coaches, and the players are only ever as good as their coaches. So if you've got a coach that is so passionate, will spend 3 hours on a plan, will send out the individual development plans, this, that, then their player development will be so much higher. And having those high expectations that Juventus set will will only help their development as well. Because the higher expectations you have, the higher expectations they have of yourself coaching them. And it just goes hand in hand, and you will get the best experience out of that. Did would you say your experience at in Kuwait, with Juventus, do you think it changed how you saw player development?
uh, kind of, because I think part of the reason I managed to get into Juventus without being B licensed, A licensed, qualified, or whatever, was sort of how I thought about football and how I explained how I thought about football. I think you're probably right in terms of being able to actually do it, because everyone can talk about it, but it's then actually doing it, which is the difficult, is the very difficult part. So I think probably getting it from sort of paper and then onto the training pitch is probably what I learned in Juventus the most, because anyone can talk, and especially I can talk about player development, how I think it should be done, and how you should platform players, and you should make sure that super strengths and all that, and hiding players' weaknesses, to get them to the best level and stuff like that. But it's all good talking about it, but then you've got to actually do it. And then going from, let's say, a Spondon to a Juventus, you can talk and talk and talk at a Spondon, and then as we've gone on about, you can have your plan in the back of your car going, oh, I'll do this, this, and this, and you plan it in 10 minutes, and then you go and do a half decent session. Whereas in Juventus, you've got your teams, so you need to be able to pick out that player. My central midfielder at the under 17s team as well. So sometimes we go, our centre mid, what do we want from him? What do we want? And then we were able to bring up, like say, like an ILP or something, and say that's exactly what we want to do. Whereas grassroots, you don't get that luxury a lot of the time, because they might be chopping and changing. That parents might pull them out of the team, or they might not be there for a couple of sessions in a row because there's they've got on holiday, or whatever it might be. Whereas at Juve, we were able to really sort of have a look at players and go, that's exactly what we want. But it's the luxury of full-time football. That's that's the main thing. It's the luxury of full-time football. And going on about the positive experiences and stuff like that, the negatives of that as well is obviously there's a lot more pressure to it. But then obviously I loved it, but then my decision to leave, was then a very bad decision, because I wish I was still in it, sort of thing. So, there's differences to it. But I think overall, if people can, they definitely should. Because even if you leave after a couple of months, there's no shame in it. No shame in it at all, because most people wouldn't do it. That's the main thing. Most people wouldn't take the jump. They'd rather be at their grassroots team for. I didn't want to be one of these coaches where they were coaching grassroots for 25 years, and then they're 50, then they've gone, like, I really love coaching. Why didn't I try it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Not living to regret. And I think what you said there about there was obviously more positives from going over to Kuwait, but there were negatives, and I probably wouldn't label them as negatives. I think they're they're just learning opportunities of going. I left after 6 months, probably shouldn't have, but I learned a lot. Maybe I'll do it another day, or you learn from that experience. I wouldn't necessarily label it as a negative. I think you're being quite harsh on yourself to say that you got negatives away from that. I think yeah, they're just ways of you learning and further developing yourself as a coach. Um, Now I've got a couple more questions, moving a little bit away from the Kuwait side of things. Progressing through qualifications and getting the piece of paper that says that you can coach is a very, very frustrating thing. And I know yourself, from speaking with you, uh, you've been frustrated with it. Um, Obviously you've got your level one, your level two, and your UEFA C. Um,
Yeah.
Now UEFA B is it seems impossible for you. You've applied and applied and applied, and you just can't get onto it.
Yeah.
A, what has the process been like, and how have you dealt with that frustration? And B, why do you think that it is so competitive when, if you look in the grassroots side of football, we struggle to get volunteers? So it's like, well, on one end of the scale, we've not got enough people that want to coach, but on the other end of the scale, we've got a million candidates for the UEFA B course, so I can't get on it. what sort of what's the process been like, and how have you got over
Yeah.
things like
So going from your first point of the process, without being too disparaging, I think it's a load of nonsense, to be honest, because the idea that you get a bit of paper to say you can coach is stupid, really. But there's got to be some sort of way that they can, sort of have qualification and stuff like that for academies to be able to, vet certain coaches and stuff like that. So I get it. Um, but there's lots of level one coaches that are better than UEFA B coaches. Guaranteed. There'll be a lot of coaches that aren't qualified that are better than UEFA B coaches. Um, Unfortunately, UEFA B is the standard for academies. So I've had a look around almost everywhere, and it's UEFA B, UEFA B, UEFA B. If you want to have full-time football, because I got incredibly lucky in Kuwait that I got accepted on a level two. Um, but basically everything in England, if you want to be, let's say, a coach for a football and education program, a lot of time it's your way for B as well. So college football, it's your way for B. Uni football, a lot of time it's your way for B. Um, it's just the standard. But yeah, I think I've applied 3 times through England. I've applied twice through Wales. I've took on a master's degree to try and get on my UEFA B, which I've then had to defer by a year because they didn't accept me because they said something about my UEFA C wasn't right. When the previous year they didn't need a UEFA C from me. Um, so there's been a lot of headache with it. But as you know, as you know, as I say, the three men and the dog that are watching, they'll know that, coaching's up and down. A UEFA, I'd rather have the pain for a couple of years of trying to get my UEFA B than sack it off. And then in 10 years' time, I'm going, I should have just done it. Like, I should have just done it, sort of thing. So, as I say, there's lots of headache towards it. I know there's lots of people that don't like the system and stuff like that. The thing is that once you get onto these qualifications, they're actually quite good. They're actually quite informative. There's not enough of them. And then to go to your point about grassroots coaching, I think a lot of people are probably too proud to go into grassroots coaching. I think that's why. I think they probably get the level two and they think, right, I'm going to academies now, which I can't say anything because I'm doing the same. So I can't really say anything. But I think that's why. I think a lot of people don't want to coach. But I think it also goes to facilities as well, because I don't think people want to coach on the side of a park where you've had to pick up dog poo beforehand and then coach under 11s. I don't think they want to do that. I think they'd rather be somewhere on a nice astroturf with good quality facilities, with good quality coaching, with a good head of coaching, good head of academy, and actually improve rather than having, some parent screaming at you that their kid hasn't played up front, for 90 minutes when, when you've explicitly said to them that you're going to rotate positions or something like that. I don't think they're interested. I think it also goes to opportunities for people. I think it also goes for referees as well. I think there's not a lot of referees about. So people are going, there's the chance I might step. I know I've done this. I've thought I might have to step in as a referee here. I don't really want to do this, but there's so many different reasons to it as to why people don't want to do grassroots coaching. But I think it needs to be sorted out in England in terms of facilities, because I think for me, that's the main part. Or change it that football ends up being a summer sport because it ends up being a winter sport and then everything gets called off because it's snowing or raining. So it doesn't happen on a nice AstroTurf when you're coaching at, I don't know, Port Vale's academy or Derby's academy or wherever. Whereas if you're coaching at, you know, lack of a better term, dog shit park, it does it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think what you said there spot on, and we don't have those facilities to accommodate the coaches that we want, and I think that plays an effect on the players as well as the coaches. And like you said there, I think you're spot on with there's there's not many coaches that want to get involved because they don't want to have to pick up the dog poo before they coach an under 11s team.
Yeah.
And we just don't have those facilities, and it impacts player development because I mean I know speaking from the under 18s that I run, I, I think we've had one game in the past 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So we get one training session a week, an hour and a half, 2 hours a week, and that is it. And
Yeah.
and we can't get the games because they're all called off, and we just don't have the facilities to provide that. Um, we're going to start to wrap it up now. At the end of the podcast, I like to do a quick fire round. It's not quick fire. Feel free to expand on it.
Yeah.
I just call it the quick fire round. That's just what it's called.
I'm not very good at quickfire.
So I've just got two questions and then a closing question, and we'll see you out. So the first question is what what does development mean to you as a coach? Whether that's coaching
Um,
players or developing yourself, however you want to sort of interpret that question is completely up.
well, I'll do two parts then. So coaching players, uh, that's also a two-parter in terms of coaching the actual player, coaching the, or I guess getting the best out of the person as well. So I think I've said this word quite a few times, but platforming players. So I think it's much easier to platform someone than to try and coach them so much they end up over coaching. I think a lot of people can get into that, especially at high level. They can definitely try and overcoach players and actually take out what they're good at. I think yeah, again, not to be disparaging to people, but I think sometimes when you see dads and screaming and shouting at kids and telling them, effing do this, effing do that, and that you look at the pitch and they're 9, then it's like you'd rather almost have, get them to have no coach than have that sort of coach. So I think it's just getting the best out of players, getting the best out of people. What we spoke previously about the 1%, just making sure that the next training session or the next match day, they just get a little bit better. Whether it could be technically, could be tactically, it could be the confidence, it could be the communication. They want to speak with you more as the coach. They want to speak to their teammates more. It's always the 1%. I think once you get higher up the age groups and higher ability, then it's looking definitely at technical, tactical, the way that you work as a team, the way you work in your units, etc. But I think for development, especially at the younger ages, it's so important to platform players and to make sure that they are just getting a little bit better every time. Because if they get really, really good really, really quickly, you can't really sustain that. And then you end up hitting sort of a level, but then the player will just think, oh, like, I'm just not getting better at this. Like they end up quitting. Whereas if you can get them just be a little bit better every session or every game, I think that's the best thing for everyone.
I
And
just,
then for me, sorry to cut you off, I didn't do my second part. For me, just making sure I get better. That's it. Making sure I get better. Just one about reviewing stuff, making sure that you do diligence for every session, thinking just try and get a little bit better every time. So every time I get off the training pitch, as I said, the 1%, is it confidence? Is it your tactical knowledge? Is it your technical knowledge? Whatever it might be.
perfect answer. I love that. What advice would you give to a coach just starting out?
Um, don't have a huge ego. So don't think you know everything just because you watch, Monday Night Football. Um, just because you've seen, I remember, I think it was Russell Martin. He did a Monday Night Football that was like absolutely incredible. Tactical knowledge that he had, the technical detail to everything was absolutely incredible. But if I tried to take that into my under nines, with what he was saying, you just get nowhere. If you took everything from that, the knowledge that he was, putting into it, the words that he was saying as well, if you tell little daisy at fullback to, cut in and invert and make a box midfield, they're going to go, what? What? So you've just got to make sure that you are able to check your ego aside. I used to have a massive ego when I was younger, still do a little bit, but I used to have a huge ego. I used to think that I knew everything. But in actual fact, that was going out to Kuwait. I realized I'm not actually like that great. I've got so much to learn. I think park your ego up at the door and just make sure that you're a sponge to everything. However, saying that, give everything a go. Don't be one of those coaches that stands at the sideline and is happy picking up cones. Like if you want to be a coach, don't take picking up cones, as a job. You've got to get in and you've got to learn by failing, which is what we've said. You've got to learn by failing. Everyone learns by failing. You don't learn by getting things right. Everyone can look like they're getting things right, but you're not taking a risk if you get everything right. That would be my advice to someone.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just put your all into it. Give everything a go. Just do it. Get out on the pitch,
Yeah,
and like you say, don't just pick up the cones. Put the cones down. Start to make a plan. If you're starting out as an assistant, well, drop him a WhatsApp message going, "Oh, can I deliver 10 minutes of the session? Can I do the warm up?" And then by next week, instead of doing 10 minutes, you're doing 12 minutes. And it's just it's finding those 1% of how can you
yeah,
improve, how can you grow in confidence, because I think that is one of the biggest things that make coaches drop out so early is having that confidence of like we mentioned earlier, of going into a group of 13-year-olds and trying to prove that you know what you're talking about when you've only
yeah,
ever watched 3 episodes of Monday Night Football. um and another point that you said, which I had a massive problem in my coaching. Luckily I've cut it out now. But it was a huge problem. I was coaching under eights and under nines, and I'd told them we're going to play inverted wingers. Uh, and even that alone is like, what is an inverted
yeah.
winger? What is that? And just these really technical terms, like when we're defending, I want you to apply pressure, don't press the ball. I want my right back to cover and balance. And I'm like, these kids don't even know what that means.
They don't know what you're on about.
It's
Yeah,
like you go to the ball and you stand there. That's what it needs to be.
yeah. I think that's the sign of a good coach, though, is if you know what terminology to say to what players and being able to adapt. I think obviously with a lot of top level coaches now they don't adapt, and then people see that. Whereas actually, if you're in the younger ages, yeah, you need to adapt a lot to different players' needs.
Absolutely, and adaptation is a whole nother podcast, and and we could talk about how to adapt and the problems with adapting, progressing, regressing. It's like I say, a whole nother hour long. Um,
Yeah.
Last question then. Uh, Fast forward 5 years, where do you want to be?
Hopefully with a UEFA B license, I'll take that for free. But apart from that, hopefully I would have coached abroad again, ideally, or at least planning to coach abroad, with a bit of a sort of a plan in mind. I'd be what, 30. So I reckon, yeah, be probably looking at full-time football. I'd love to step into actual competitive men's football or women's football, and a tier five is really good, but with a sort of with a I guess a tier three, tier two team maybe. I'd say maybe abroad somewhere in a foreign country with, I don't know, I've always sort of wanted to go out to Scandinavia or something because they've got really good youth football. I saw I can't remember his name, but he coached with, no, it's not Scandinavia, but he coached with PSV's under 19s. Sort of that academy looks really good. So somewhere with a really good academy system, I would say abroad would hopefully be where I'd be at. If not high level women's coaching, high level sort of men's coaching, whether it be non-league or in a academy setting.
I love that, and I would use the word big aspirations, but I don't think it is, because I think what you've said there is very achievable. Um, based off of your passion alone, let alone the skill level of a coach that you are. I think the passion that you have into the game is enough to get you there in 5 years. And I don't, other than the UEFA B, is because
Yeah, the
that's
UEFA
out
B
of your
will be a
control.
yeah, that'll be a challenge,
But everything
who
else,
knows?
no, I think it's definitely achievable. Look, I'm wary that I've had you for a very long time. Everything on the podcast you said today has been brilliant. I mean, we've looked into your coaching journey, the highlights of women's football, your international experience, which I personally loved hearing about. Um, the reality of qualification pathway, and your resilience behind that. And again, just to reiterate, everything that this podcast is about of that football is really, well, coaching is really not that simple as turning up on a Friday night for an hour and turning up on a Sunday morning for an hour. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, or fortunately, coaching is an 8 day a week job. Um, but that is what we all love about it. So no, Dan, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate
thank you.
it, and I hope you enjoyed coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a nice experience. I'm sure, the five people watching now have loved it.
Super. Thank you very much, Dan.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching the latest episode of Inside Football. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to check us out on Spotify, drop us a follow and subscribe on YouTube. See you in the next one.